Chapter 2. Then 14 years after, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas and took Titus with me also. So he went to Jerusalem the first time. He referenced it in the first chapter. He goes to Jerusalem 14 years later, and I think this is the third time if you follow in Acts. But he's not worried about that other trip. Verse 2. And I went up by revelation and communicated unto them that gospel which I preached among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run or had run in vain. So he went up by revelation. What does that mean?
He went up by revelation of what, Jesus or the Holy Ghost?
Well, it says, and I went up by revelation and communicated unto them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles. So what does it mean that he went up by revelation?
I'm not really sure about that.
Okay, well, Jesus said, Paul, you're going to have to go deal with this. Well, Jesus, why don't you just fix it?
Then Jesus,
I am fixing it, Paul. Go deal with it. See, does the king go out and do every task in the kingdom?
no.
No, he has people go out and do it. Okay, Paul, you need to go fix this. See, people want to say, why doesn't God just fix everything? Well, he is. He's using you to do it, and you won't get up off your butt and do what you're supposed to do. That's why it's not getting done. Well, God can do anything. Why doesn't he just do everything? Well, it's for his pleasure. He's not doing that. Okay, so I'm going to conclude here that Jesus has told Paul, you need to go down to Jerusalem and talk. Try to get this, what these people are doing, to stop.
Then it was commanded by Jesus to go over there.
That's what I would think. So I'm not just going to go and appear to each and every person and tell them to stop it. I'm not doing that. Well, God can do anything. Yeah, but he's not doing that. So people got to get off
He
the...
sent Paul over there.
Yeah, Paul, you go. You're my ambassador. Go down there and take care of it.
That's what he means by revelation. from
That,
Jesus.
well, he got revealed something. He got new instruction,
Uh-huh.
and the instruction is to go down there and talk to them.
Down there to Galilee.
To
Oh,
Jerusalem.
To Judah.
To Jerusalem. All right, so he said that he took Barnabas and Titus. All right, verse 3. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And that because of false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privily to spy out our liberty, which we have in Christ Jesus, that they might bring us into bondage, to whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. So Paul's saying, again, he's writing to these Galatians. That there are people who wanted Titus to get circumcised. Actually, this is when he goes down to Jerusalem. They think, well, Titus needs to get circumcised. And Paul says, no, he's a Greek. He's not a Jew. Now, when they were compelling Timothy to get circumcised, why did Paul say, okay, fine?
Just to make him feel okay.
Well, Timothy was half Jewish.
Huh?
Timothy was half Jewish. His mother was Jewish. His father was not.
You're talking about Timothy?
That's right.
But Paul, the gospel of the Gentiles don't require them to get.
Well, that's correct. But in the case of Timothy, he said, okay, fine, we'll do that. Paul says, to the Jew, I become as a Jew. To the non-Jew, I become as a non-Jew. So, fine. You want Timothy circumcised? If that will keep you from fighting with me, fine, we'll do that.
And then that's why.
Right. But when it came to Titus, he's not a Jew at all. No way. I'm not going to set an example where a non-Jew or Gentile is getting circumcised.
Mhm.
So he puts his foot down here. So that's the difference between the two.
And that was a big issue for the Jews.
Yes. Well, he's
The Jews that wanted the law.
he's making it the point back in Acts 15. The things that we'll do, because we'll say fine, that's okay, and the things that we won't do, no, putting our foot down. All right, and he says he has false brethren coming in, and watching what they're doing and causing trouble. All right, verse 6. But of these who seem to be somewhat, whatsoever they were, it maketh no matter to me. God accepteth no man's person. For they who seemed to be somewhat in conference added nothing to me. So who do you think would be there at this meeting? Would be who you would think would have some authority, but Paul says, well, they didn't add anything to what I was saying. Peter, James, the brother of Jesus, John, the other apostles, they're there, but they could speak from their commission, but not from Paul's. They didn't fully understand what Jesus had told Paul. Hey, Peter, I got something to tell you. Here's what I told Paul. No, he didn't do that. So,
But they, at the same time, they accepted what Paul was doing.
but Paul had to go and tell them and say it's through mighty miracles that you'll believe what I say.
Through what? Mighty miracles.
Yeah, Paul's been doing great miracles and wonders. Look, God's behind me too.
Oh, I guess they believe that.
All right, so verse 7. But contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of the circumcision was unto Peter, for he that wrought effectually in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me towards the Gentiles. So before I go to finish the sentence, what's the gospel of the uncircumcision? What's the good news to the uncircumcised?
The gospel of Paul.
But what does it say?
Very different. It says that all you got to do is believe.
Yeah, I have good news for you, uncircumcised Gentiles. God's at peace with you. You can get saved. And it's easy.
Right.
Now, that's fine. That's the gospel of the uncircumcision. What's the gospel of the circumcision? What's the good news to the Jew?
The law.
Well, they've had the law. They had the law already.
The good news for the Jews, the circumcised Jews,
Yeah.
the same thing.
Jesus didn't come to give them the old covenant. They already had it. So the gospel of the circumcision is your Messiah had come. Unfortunately, you missed it. But God is still going to make you a blessing to all nations. Okay, that the circumcision should remind you of the covenant of Abraham, not the covenant of Moses. Covenant of Moses, the sign was the Sabbath, but the circumcision is a sign to the Abraham. So God is still going to use you. He's using you differently now, because the people wouldn't come to the call. God's doing something different now. But Peter was carrying the message, the gospel of the kingdom, and of course that stopped. And while you probably still had some people get saved, they believed that the Messiah had come, but he's not doing that anymore. That's the bad news. The bad news of the circumcision is, well, the kingdom is too late. But your Messiah had come. He's still doing something, but really he's doing it with a Gentile now. All right, verse 9. And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given unto me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hands of fellowship, that we should go unto the heathen, and they unto their circumcision. Now, he doesn't say the uncircumcision here, he says the heathen. So who are the heathen? Are they not the same as the uncircumcision?
No, they're not.
Who are they?
The heathen are the unbelievers, the unbelievers.
Well, isn't that the uncircumcision?
They what?
Isn't that the uncircumcision?
Yes.
Okay, but why doesn't it say uncircumcision? Because the heathen's more than that. The heathen is the uncircumcision and the unbelieving Jew. See, in the New Testament, the circumcision is only the believing Jew.
Uh-huh.
Jesus says it's not enough to have the circumcision of Abraham. You've got to have the circumcision of the heart. Paul writes in Romans, you're not a Jew if you're only a Jew outwardly. You're not of the circumcision if it's only the outward circumcision. You weren't reborn. So The heathen is the uncircumcision or the Gentiles and the unbelieving Jews. Paul can go to the unbelieving Jews. Now, he's not going to do it in the borders of Israel, but he's going to go to those that are outside of Israel. And they agreed to that in Acts chapter 15. James, Cephas, and John. Who's Cephas?
Peter.
All right. So James, Peter, and John. That's the order of some of your Hebrew books. You have the book of James, followed by 1st, 2nd Peter, followed by 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. So who likely wrote the book of James? I'll say it's probably Jesus' brother and not the other apostle. Now, there were 2 apostles named James. One of them was killed, the other one not. So, based upon this verse, I'm going to just say, well, I think it's given to us like that so that we would receive the order of those books being the authors. But you don't have to believe that. That's all right. That would make Jude, the brother of James, Jesus' brother Jude, as opposed to the other Jude that was an apostle. But some people believe otherwise. All right, verse 10. Only they would that we should remember the poor, the same which I also was forward to do. So they agreed on not interfering with each other's commissions. And in fact, the Great Commission, as they call it, Peter, James, and John said, well, we're stopping it. We're not going to all the Jews that are abroad. We're going to leave that to Paul. See, the Jew was never going to the Gentile. The commission was never to the Gentile. The commission was to the Jews. But they said, we're not even going to go to the scattered Jews now. We're leaving that to you, Paul. And that's Eastland doesn't understand that. They don't understand that. They don't understand that.
What they say.
Well, they think that the 12 were going to the Gentiles, and Paul's part of that. That didn't make any sense.
The 12 went to the Gentiles.
They were supposed to go to the Gentiles, and, well, we'll let Paul do it for us. No, that's not what... Paul's doing something completely different. Paul's not ushering in the kingdom. Dispensation of grace, which is apart from the law. The 12 were doing the law. Now, if Paul gets any Jews saved, he's going to tell them, you're not under the law anymore, in spite of you wanting to do it. I would think they would be going, oh, thank you, Lord. I don't have to do this anymore. But see, when it's ingrained in you, you can't drop it. Try to tell a Catholic that he doesn't have to do all that stuff. He can't.
And communion or whatever.
Yeah, he can't. He thinks I'll be betraying God. But anyway, all right, verse 11. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed. So before I go on, what's important about Antioch?
What's important about Antioch?
Well, that was essentially Paul's headquarters, where he started and ended all his missionary journeys. I think most of them anyway. It's where they were first called Christians, and it's where we say we get our Greek texts for the Bible. They're Syrian texts that come out of primarily Antioch. We don't get the ones that come out of Alexandria down in Egypt, which is where all the corrupt Bibles come from. So Antioch is akin to Jerusalem, but God never tells us to go to Antioch 3 times a year or to erect a temple there or anything else. It's just revered as the starting point, but otherwise it's nothing. All right, verse 12. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing them which were of the circumcision. So Peter comes to Antioch, and he's fellowshipping with Paul and all the Gentiles. And then this group of people shows up from Jerusalem, and then Peter's like, I don't hang out with those guys anymore. those heathen. I'll come hang out with you. And Paul is ticked. Peter, I thought you understood. Peter, I thought you were brave. It's like Peter lied 3 times to Christ. When the circumstances were bad, he turned chicken. I'm not claiming I wouldn't, but I'm just saying that's what happened here. So verse 13, and the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. So when they saw Peter, go away from the Gentiles, so did many of the other Jews that were there, including Barnabas. Yeah, let's say they were all sitting at the table, and these Jews walk in. Peter got up and left. These other Jews got up and left too. So Paul was ticked off. Verse 14, but when I saw that they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all, if thou being a Jew livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? So Paul's made his point. Verse 15, we who are Jews by nature and not sinners of the Gentiles, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by the faith of Jesus Christ, even we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law, for by the works of the law shall no flesh be justified. Now it says the faith of Jesus Christ, not the faith in Jesus Christ. So what's the faith of Jesus Christ?
No, the faith in Jesus Christ is believing in him.
No, that would be the faith in Jesus Christ. The faith of Jesus Christ is his faithfulness to live perfectly and to go to the cross, to do the work that he was called to do. That's his faithfulness.
Right.
So we are justified by his faithfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we believe in him, but if he doesn't do the work, there's really nothing to believe.
Right.
Okay.
But he did the work.
Right. So we're justified by the faith of Christ. He knew that if I go and do what I need to do, I can take salvation to all. And so he was faithful. He went and did it. He believed what he knew, and he went and did it. All right, verse 17. But if, while we seek to be justified by Christ, we ourselves also are found sinners, is therefore Christ the minister of sin? God forbid. For if I build again the things which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. For if I through the law am dead to the law, that I might live to God. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. For I through the law am dead to the law, that I might live again, I might live unto God. I'm putting in words that aren't there. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. I do not frustrate the grace of God, for if righteousness come by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. So again, Paul is hammering it home that we're not under the law. What Jesus has done has allowed you to not be bound up in the law like the Jews were, and to go back under it. What are you doing? And that's the problem that these churches in Galatia had. Why were they doing that? Well, someone came in and
Told them that they still have to do the law.
stepped on what Paul had taught and got them to turn from it, got them to be deceived, added the law to grace, which you can't do. And many churches are doing that today. Most churches are doing that today by not rightly dividing. They're trying to do the law yet not be under it. Huh? You can't.
Trying to do the law and not be under it.
Yes. I'm not under the law, but I got to keep it. Wait a minute.
They're doing the law.
Well, that's right. That's the point. You can't say what Jesus taught in his earthly ministry is to me. I got to do what Jesus said. I got to bear my cross. I got to have fruits of works of righteousness.
And be circumcised, baptized.
Well, yeah. What they'll do is it's a buffet. I'll have a baptism. Let's see. I'll not murder. I won't. Oh, no, I'll do the Sabbath. That's all right. I'll do that one. What? You got some people.
Holidays of the Jews.
You got people thinking we're still under the Sabbath. Seventh-day Adventists. That's one of them. So a lot of churches are babes in Christ because they do not know how to mature in grace. All right, that's chapter 2.